Keep in mind, we stayed using condoms all the time,
No,
24/7. She was a party girl all the way up to date.
Okay, so then you started a sexual relationship.
Yep, extremely. There's no contact. I made sure that it wasn't going to be any contact till I found out for certain that was my daughter.
All right. You admit to having an extremely complicated relationship with the defendant, Mr. Moore. You, Ms. Matthews, was having an affair with another man, you, about her pregnancy because she was uncertain if her unborn child was yours.
Yes, Your Honor.
You've had a hard time letting little Zanaya into your heart because of your continued doubt and uncertainty. Ms. Matthews destroyed in a jealous rage.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, he says you didn't tell him you were pregnant until 4 months.
So I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't tell some of my family members either because I didn't know what I was going to do.
So you were having issues and complications
with
in
my
the pregnancy.
With the guy who was presumably, he could be the dad.
Okay, Jerome, let me see that evidence Mr. Moore is presenting. So let me understand this.
In Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, the atmosphere carries a very specific weight, the kind that sits on the shoulders of people who have finally run out of places to hide from the truth. This case begins exactly in that pressure-filled space, where a mother arrives determined to prove that the man she once trusted is indeed the biological father of her young daughter, and where that man stands equally determined to argue that the situation is far more complicated than she wants anyone to believe. The courtroom becomes a place where personal histories, emotional wounds, jealousy, anger, and unanswered questions collide under the structured authority of law. The moment the case opens, the central conflict becomes clear. The mother insists with certainty that the defendant is the father of her 3-year-old daughter, while the alleged father claims overwhelming doubt rooted in months of mistrust, rumors, and contradictions. He argues that he was misled, manipulated, and kept in the dark, and he paints a picture of a relationship that was anything but steady. Their past wasn't simple companionship. It was a mixture of affection, emotional chaos, broken boundaries, and blurred expectations. And in Lauren Lake's courtroom, all of it must be unpacked and examined like evidence laid out on the table. As the description unfolds, the courtroom discussion begins to reflect themes often explored in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, the Divorce Course podcast, and even the emotional testimonies heard in Celebrate Recovery Testimonies. This case isn't only about a DNA test. It's about the messy space where human behavior crashes into the legal system. It touches the relationship between law and justice, which is a key topic in jurisprudence and one that Judge Lake reinforces repeatedly. The truth must rise above the noise, above the blame, and above the hurt. In this case, the defendant insists that the mother's lifestyle, social media posts, and inconsistencies gave him every reason to doubt. He explains how one moment they were together, and the next moment he was discovering photos of her with another man. To him, this seemed like more than coincidence. It felt like undeniable evidence. The mother counters, saying the pictures were from a different phase of her life, taken during arguments, misunderstandings, and breaks in the relationship. She maintains that the man in those photos has nothing to do with her pregnancy. Throughout the testimony, the courtroom becomes a stage not for drama, but for the painful human process of accountability. Lauren Lake listens carefully, separating emotion from fact, disappointment from proof, accusation from actual evidence. At the same time, she reminds both sides that the courtroom is not a battleground for revenge, but a place where the truth will eventually find its way through. But the case is not limited to the two adults standing in front of her. The man's niece steps into the courtroom and adds a layer of family testimony that complicates things even further. She claims the mother is known in the neighborhood for dishonesty, for being involved with numerous people, and for previously telling men they were fathers when they were not. This is where the courtroom enters the zone of adverse inference in evidence act, not by legal invocation, but by implication. The niece's words attempt to undermine the mother's credibility, suggesting patterns that may influence how people perceive uncertainty. Meanwhile, the mother remains emotional yet firm, insisting she has been working, providing, and carrying the weight of single motherhood. She says she has sacrificed sleep, social life, and personal comfort to ensure her daughter is cared for. She does not hide the mistakes she made in her past relationship, but she insists that none of them involve deception regarding the child's paternity. She also acknowledges breaking the defendant's car window during an emotionally heated confrontation, an action that later leads the court to order her to pay $285 in damages. Judge Lauren Lake emphasizes repeatedly that personal conflict cannot overshadow the health, dignity, and future of the child. She speaks on principles deeply tied to the concept of justice in jurisprudence, reminding everyone that justice is not just about legal correctness, but about moral responsibility. Throughout the description, the case reflects how often people regret taking a DNA test, not because the science is flawed, but because the truth can unravel relationships, self-image, and identity. As many stories in cheating stories or adoption stories full episodes show, the truth can create stability or destroy it, depending on what is revealed. The court also touches the delicate matter of child support and parental duty. If the DNA test confirms paternity, the defendant's responsibilities extend beyond emotion and doubt. They become legal and lifelong. If the DNA test excludes him, then the burden shifts entirely, forcing the mother to confront the possibility that the father is someone she has not yet acknowledged publicly, a situation Judge Lake hints at gently but clearly. When the evidence is fully discussed, Judge Lauren Lake orders the DNA results to be presented. Before reading them, she reminds both sides that this is not about ego, pride, or winning an argument. It is about a little girl who deserves clarity, stability, and truth. Her words reflect the essence often highlighted in Truth Changes Everything podcast. That truth may be painful, but it is the only foundation strong enough to build a future on. The moment leading to the DNA results summary becomes heavy with expectation. One side clings to the hope that the results will prove long-held belief. The other prepares for the possibility that everything may change in a single sentence. The courtroom becomes silent enough to feel every heartbeat. When the DNA results declare that the defendant is not the father, the emotional structure of the entire case shifts in an instant. The defendant expresses a sense of relief mixed with justified frustration, while the mother reacts with shock, but also a strange calmness, as though somewhere deep inside she may have anticipated this outcome. It is in this moment that Judge Lauren Lake's role as both a legal authority and a moral guide becomes clear. She encourages the mother to face the truth fully, that the biological father is someone she likely already has an idea about, and that her daughter deserves honesty, stability, and answers. The result concludes the first half of this description's emotional rhythm, a courtroom filled with tangled stories, unresolved guilt, hopes, disappointments, and now, a definitive biological truth. The aftermath of the DNA result becomes the emotional center of the courtroom, and Judge Lauren Lake immediately shifts the focus toward accountability, clarity, and the long-term well-being of the child. Even though the defendant is not the biological father, the tension in the courtroom does not disappear. Instead, it transforms into a new set of questions about truth, responsibility, and the moral landscape where law and personal choices intersect. This is where the courtroom becomes less about conflict and more about reflection, mirroring the discussions often found in the Divorce Course podcast, the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, and thoughtful debates about the relationship between law and justice. The judge's approach demonstrates a key principle in jurisprudence. Justice is not only the application of law but the pursuit of honesty. Judge Lauren Lake emphasizes that while the legal determination is now clear, the emotional consequences remain unresolved. The mother must now confront the reality that the man she believed or wanted to believe was the father is not the biological parent. This places her in the difficult position of revisiting her past, her decisions, and her silence. The truth may be liberating, but it also exposes the weight she has been carrying alone. This portion of the description explores the mother's internal conflict. She insists that she has always acted out of love, out of fear, and out of uncertainty, yet she now faces an uncomfortable truth. She must identify and confront the real biological father. Judge Lauren Lake encourages her gently but firmly, acknowledging that the truth does not destroy a life. It simply demands adjustments. The judge's guidance reflects the tone found in Truth Changes Everything podcast, where the truth is not the enemy, but the doorway to healing. The emotional core of this court session also touches themes seen in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where individuals admit mistakes, confront their secrets, and attempt to rebuild their lives with honesty. The mother now stands in that exact vulnerable space. Her identity as a parent remains intact, but the narrative she believed, repeated, or perhaps protected must now be rewritten. This is where the concept of personal responsibility becomes crucial. Law can reveal the truth, but only the individual can embrace it. The man, after hearing the results, expresses relief. For him, the doubt that shadowed his life for years finally ends. But his relief is mixed with sadness. Sadness that he spent years questioning a child he was afraid to love. Sadness that mistrust overshadowed what could have been a more peaceful chapter in his life. His emotional expression reflects what many individuals experience after a DNA test, not just clarity but a kind of grieving. He grieves wasted time, emotional turmoil, and the pressure that led him to distance himself from a child he might have loved if the truth had been clear from the beginning. Judge Lauren Lake also brings attention to the concept of adverse inference in Evidence Act, not as a legal instruction here, but as an idea that reflects how courts often interpret silence, missing information, or inconsistencies. In this case, the mother's hesitation to discuss other possible fathers created an emotional inference in the defendant's mind, even though the court cannot assume guilt or innocence from silence. The discussion highlights the delicate line between personal vulnerability and legal procedure. The courtroom must also address the issue of the broken car window, a moment of anger that escalated into property damage. The judge's ruling for $285 reminds everyone that regardless of emotional turmoil, the law requires accountability. In many cheating stories, impulsive reactions stem from betrayal or misunderstandings, but in a courtroom, accountability does not vanish simply because emotions are overwhelming. This principle reinforces the broader concept of justice in jurisprudence, where emotional pain does not eliminate legal responsibility. With the paternity question settled, the mother now carries the responsibility to identify the true biological father. This places her in the territory often explored in adoption stories' full episodes, where individuals confront complicated histories, hidden truths, or unexpected family connections. But unlike adoption, where multiple parties may be searching for one another, here the mother must confront the truth she already knows. Judge Lauren Lake encourages her to face this honestly, because her daughter's identity, future, and emotional stability depend on transparency. The conversation then shifts subtly from conflict to reflection. The mother expresses her dedication to her daughter, insisting that she will continue to provide for her and protect her. She claims she has put her daughter above everything, and that despite others' accusations, she has always kept her child fed, clothed, and loved. Her words reflect the kind of emotional resilience often heard in podcast evidence stage in divorce case stories, where people recount the challenges of single parenting, judgment from others, and the internal pressure of balancing survival with dignity. The court also highlights how community perception can distort truth. The niece's narrative created a reputation-based accusation, illustrating how neighborhood stories can influence people's opinions, even when those stories lack factual evidence. This is a common theme in both legal analysis and real-life testimonies. People are often judged more by rumor than reality. This case demonstrates why formal legal processes, like DNA testing, exist, to cut through the fog of hearsay and reveal the factual foundation beneath the noise. As the courtroom discussion unfolds, Judge Lauren Lake reinforces the importance of emotional maturity, especially when children are involved. This is a recurring theme in many episodes where child support becomes a topic of discussion. The judge explains that financial responsibility, emotional presence, and parental stability are not optional. They are obligations defined by both law and morality. In this case, because the defendant is not the father, he carries no legal duty for child support, but the mother must now begin a new search for accountability from the man who is biologically involved. At this stage of the description, the courtroom has shifted into a space of learning. Everyone involved is forced to confront truths about relationships, choices, and consequences. The defendant learns that, although he is not the father, the years of doubt were rooted not in science, but in human fear. The mother learns that withholding information or delaying the truth only increases emotional burden. And the judge reinforces that justice is not just a ruling. It is a process of guiding people toward better decisions, better communication, and better stability for the children caught in these conflicts. One of the lingering questions addressed indirectly is the emotional impact on the child. The court emphasizes that she deserves clarity, a sense of belonging, and the emotional security of knowing her identity. Even though she is too young to understand the legal details, she will one day ask questions the mother must be ready to answer with honesty. This mirrors discussions in Supreme Court child support cases, where the long-term well-being of the child takes precedence over the mistakes of the adults. Throughout this portion of the narrative, the courtroom reflects the very heart of human conflict: misunderstanding, mistrust, emotional damage, and the painful path to healing. Just like episodes on the Divorce Course podcast, the case reveals that truth, though often harsh, is also the only foundation strong enough for closure. The emotional energy begins to settle as the court transitions from the DNA decision to the judge's closing guidance. The courtroom is no longer tense but contemplative. Everyone understands that while this chapter ends here, the next stage of responsibility begins now, especially for the mother, who must confront her own truth with courage. As the courtroom settles into a quieter atmosphere, Judge Lauren Lake turns the moment into a lesson that reaches far beyond the individual standing before her. This final chapter of the description moves deeper into the emotional, legal, and moral implications of the case, the parts that continue long after the gavel drops. In the spirit of thoughtful conversations explored in Truth Changes Everything podcast, the judge reminds everyone that truth, once revealed, does not vanish. It becomes a permanent part of their lives, shaping how they move forward as parents, families, and individuals. The mother stands in a complex space, somewhere between heartbreak and clarity. She now knows that the man she believed to be the father is not biologically connected to her daughter. This truth places a weight on her heart, but also removes a layer of denial she has been holding onto. Her journey from this point forward mirrors the emotional honesty often shared in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where individuals face the consequences of their choices with vulnerability. Judge Lauren Lake encourages her to embrace this reality not as a defeat, but as the first step toward true stability for herself and her child. The judge also highlights how misinformation, rumor, and emotional reactivity contributed to the chaos of this case. The courtroom heard stories, assumptions, neighborhood gossip, and emotionally charged accusations. Much of this created a fog around the central issue, the child. This is where the relationship between law and justice becomes clear. Law focuses on verified facts, while justice aims to restore balance in human relationships. Neither operates perfectly without truth, and this case demonstrates exactly why. The mother's challenge now involves identifying the real biological father, a responsibility she cannot delay. As Judge Lauren Lake explains, the child deserves to know where she comes from, not only biologically but emotionally. This is similar to themes found in adoption stories' full episodes, where individuals often search for biological roots to understand themselves more deeply. The mother must now navigate her past honestly, even if it means revisiting complicated or painful memories. The truth may not be easy, but hiding from it only delays healing. Meanwhile, the defendant leaves the courtroom with the closure he has been seeking for years. His relief reflects the experiences found in many cheating stories, where uncertainty corrodes emotional stability. The DNA result removes the burden of responsibility he did not know how to carry and lifts the doubt that once prevented him from forming a genuine connection with the child. His journey through this emotional storm mirrors discussions often found in the Divorce Course podcast, where co-parenting dynamics, mistrust, and personal growth collide. Yet, even with relief, the defendant must acknowledge that the process has changed him. The court's emphasis on accountability, communication, and emotional maturity has forced him to confront aspects of himself he may not have addressed otherwise. Cases like this reveal how the structure of legal proceedings can shape personal development. This reflects the principles discussed in the Game Changing Attorney podcast, where legal practice often intersects with human transformation. At this stage, the description addresses the broader societal implications. Cases involving DNA test results, paternity claims, family disputes, and financial responsibility often reveal how fragile relationships become when communication breaks down. Many individuals hesitate to seek the truth because they fear the consequences. And indeed, as often observed, people regret taking the test when it disrupts the identity they have built. However, Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom consistently proves that even painful truth is better than a lifelong question mark. The judge also revisits the issue of the broken window, reinforcing that emotional reactions do not erase accountability. The order to pay $285 is not merely about money. It symbolizes that actions, even in moments of anger, have consequences. This mirrors real-life cases involving emotional confrontations, property damage, and disputes often discussed with legal clarity in the Evidence Act, particularly regarding the concept of adverse inference when individuals refuse to provide information or attempt to hide details. While not directly applied here, the emotional parallels make the concept relevant. By this part of the description, the judge transitions into guidance, a type of closing reflection often found in thoughtful commentary segments of podcast evidence stage in divorce case. She stresses that children should never be the collateral damage of adult conflicts. The little girl at the center of this case deserves stability, respect, and honesty. She deserves to grow up knowing where she came from and who stands beside her. Judge Lauren Lake emphasizes that the adults must behave with emotional discipline, even when they feel wronged or misunderstood. The mother expresses her commitment to her daughter once more, insisting that she will continue to provide for her, fight for her, and raise her with love. This reaffirmation echoes the strength and determination often heard in legal and emotional storytelling, especially in narratives involving single parents navigating complicated relationships and fragmented support systems. The defendant, relieved but reflective, expresses a desire to move forward with peace. He no longer has to question whether the child is his, but he also recognizes the emotional entanglements that brought him here. The courtroom has exposed painful truths, but it has also freed him from uncertainty and responsibility that did not belong to him. He walks away clearer, emotionally lighter, and more aware of the importance of truth in relationships. In the judge's final reflections, she addresses both parties with a balanced perspective that reflects the concept of justice in jurisprudence. Justice is not merely about declaring biological truth. It is also about guiding individuals toward better behavior, emotional growth, and understanding the impact of their actions. She reminds them that justice seeks to protect the innocent, and in this case, the child is the most innocent of all. Judge Lauren Lake reiterates